Hello, everybody. I am never late. Don't say no. I was actually on time for once. I know that I'm late often. I was actually on time for once, and then OBS decided to completely break down on me. So I'm literally just setting everything up again, which is great. You know, it's good when OBS decides just to not happen, but I don't mind because we're in Brazil, and Brazil is always an absolute banger. Like, it's always one of the best races of the season, and we've got a sprint weekend. So we're here live on Friday. Saying I'm late, I'm a day early. I'm a day early compared to most Formula One Grand Prix weekends that we do together. Hello, Antonio. Hello, Jamie. Hello, Sally. How are we doing? Hello, Car Guy 856. How are we doing? Ariosto as well. Another sprint race weekend. Another 3-day weekend lost to Formula One. Exactly. But isn't that exactly what you want to be? Isn't this exactly what you had planned for your Friday night? Although it's not really Friday night, you know. Qualifying 6 till 7. You could still get out on the town at 7 o'clock if you really wanted to. Let's go Brazil. Hello, Mia. Yes. Let's have a look at this Brazilian Grand Prix weekend then, because it's getting a little bit spicy. Ooh. Carlos Sainz free practice was the fastest. And they're just looking at his Ferrari car there. And I was hoping, or I was wondering if there was something wrong with it, but they're just kind of showing it. Max Verstappen, I think he'll stay top of the championship. I think technically he can't be beaten at the top of the championship now. 3-time world champion. But everything else below that is very, very intriguing with 3 races left to go. There are a lot of battles still left to play out. Bit old for a night out on the town? Never, Jamie. Never. I feel like that sometimes. But you never are. Perez 240, Lewis Hamilton 220, and Lewis Hamilton earlier on today saying he left with nothing from Brazil last year. He does not intend for that to be the case this time around. Some fighting talk from Lewis Hamilton now that he has closed the gap on Sergio Perez in second place in the driver's standings. Ooh. Qualifying is going to be delayed by 15 whole minutes. 15 minutes because of debris on the track, which the stewards look like they are brushing off of the racing line here in Brazil. So a little 15-minute delay for the start of qualifying this time around in Brazil. Obviously, we've got 2 qualifying sessions this weekend. It's getting very confusing with these sprint qualifying, sprint shootouts, etc. And actually, it'll give us a good chance to have a chat about sprint weekends. But continuing on with the championship very quickly, punctuality is less a British attribute. How dare you? How dare you? But Carlos Sainz, as I was mentioning him before, 183 points puts him ahead of Fernando Alonso, because Fernando Alonso's best finish of the season, of course, second place. Carlos Sainz, one of 3 drivers to get a victory this season. So he jumps up into 4th spot in the championship. And actually, Fernando Alonso looks to be falling like a stone. Lando Norris is now just 14 points behind Alonso. Another podium finish for another podium finish for Lando Norris, and he'll probably jump ahead of Fernando Alonso. It's looking very, very likely. Charles Leclerc also not too far off, considering Charles Leclerc's had a couple of mixed weekends recently, a few strategy decisions not going his way in particular, and just the pace of the Ferrari not quite being there in the races compared to qualifying. You got to remember, he's been on pole position a couple of times now, hasn't been able to convert those into victories either time. Maybe he'll end up with another pole position this weekend. Will he be able to convert that into a victory? The Ferrari is looking very quick in the 3rd and 1st sector, which are the high-speed sectors. So maybe we'll end up seeing the Ferrari towards the top of the standings and actually able to hold on to that during the sprint or during the Grand Prix. George Russell, maybe just a touch far off Fernando Alonso. Considering the form that George Russell is in, unless he goes on to win this weekend in Brazil like he did last time out in Brazil, gets 25 points and jumps ever closer to Fernando Alonso. But 32 points over 3 races seems like quite a big swing, especially because Fernando Alonso usually pulls out a couple of points finishes here or there. And you'd imagine that George Russell isn't going to go on to be on the podium 3 races in a row. So I imagine George Russell will be at the bottom of that pile still. Oscar Piastri is looking to try and have more points himself than the entire Alpine team. He's currently on 87. You can see Gasly there behind on 56. Esteban Ocon on 45. So Oscar Piastri, with a couple of good weekends, could prove once and for all he was definitely right to leave that Alpine setup, because he'll have more points in a McLaren by himself than the Alpine team has in total. Lance Stroll there in 53. Imagine if there was 53 places. On 53 points, Lance Stroll. Esteban Ocon is looking to jump in front of the Aston Martin, although Pierre Gasly holding on to that top 10 position. You know, that top 10 really is a big statement from Pierre Gasly. Alex Albon, very comfortable in 13th place, unless like Nico Hulkenberg just finds a podium finish all of a sudden. Definitely could happen here in Brazil. He's been very, very close to a podium finish in Brazil in the past. Nico Hulkenberg, of course, took pole position here in 2010 with Williams. That is how long Nico Hulkenberg has been around on the Formula One grid. He has been there, done it, got the t-shirt. Just unfortunately, it hasn't got a podium position to his name. But maybe this time around, we know Haas have looked pretty good in free practice 1. If Nico Hulkenberg can turn the Haas into an actual race pace car rather than just a qualifying car, maybe that first podium is on. He can close that gap to Alex Albon. And then there's suddenly a fight going into Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi for 13th place. Although Kevin Magnussen took pole position here last year, but came away with 0 points from the Grand Prix. Did manage a point in the sprint race, Kevin Magnussen, but then ended up being dropped out of the Grand Prix itself. However, that pole position is still celebrated massively by the Haas team and everybody involved around Haas. Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, and Liam Lawson. You'll notice there are 3 AlphaTauri drivers on the top 20 of the drivers' standings. And who will come out on top between Tsunoda and Ricciardo is a real battle this weekend that I'm looking to get into. Then Zhou Guanyu, Kevin Magnussen just behind, Liam Lawson at the bottom. Logan Sargent just drops off the bottom. I actually do have him on the driver's standings. It's just that I've only got the 20 drivers sort of put on there. Should we put Logan Sargent on? Feels bad to not have him on there, doesn't it? We'll pop him on. Logan Sargent at the bottom. 1 point for Williams this season so far. And then in the constructor standings, Mercedes and Ferrari, that battle's looking more and more over, especially because Lewis Hamilton is absolutely flying right now, and I feel like is on for another really solid weekend. McLaren are now far away from Aston Martin. There's no chance that that's going to flop in any way. Oh, bro, no one asked, David. What is happening? Alpine in 6th place, also comfortable. Williams, I want to say comfortable in 7th place. I've been saying comfortable in 7th place, but AlphaTauri all of a sudden, Daniel Ricciardo picking up 6 points in 1 weekend is a huge jump for those teams at the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. So maybe AlphaTauri can close that gap to Williams. Alfa Romeo, I don't have too much faith in. And as I said, Haas would need like a wonder weekend from Nico Hulkenberg, in my opinion, to be able to close in. I feel like Haas, I said AlphaTauri were destined for the bottom of the championship, but they've really turned it around in the last couple of races. Maybe Haas are now destined for the bottom of the championship, but whenever I say that, it seems like whoever is on the bottom of the championship suddenly manages to find a little bit of form. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Haas will definitely be looking for a good weekend, though, on a weekend where they have the only driver pairing that has been on pole position in Brazil. Obviously, George Russell started from 1st place last time out, but didn't get the official pole position. That went to Kevin Magnussen. And then Nico Hulkenberg with the pole position in 2010 means that Haas are the only team on the Formula One grid in which both drivers have had a pole position in Brazil before. Does that mean they're on for another pole position today? Let's be positive. Yes. What do I think about Stroll? Which one? Lance or Lawrence? And both of them don't really like. Now, Lance Stroll, this year I just feel like has really lost his head and has been criticised heavily. I think justifiably criticised a lot of the time. I think the problem for Lance Stroll is like Fernando Alonso is just not the teammate you want to have compared to you. I feel like we'd be a little bit less harsh on Lance Stroll if he was still partnered with, well, I mean, Sergio Perez. I know Sebastian Vettel retired before that, but if Sergio Perez was still at Aston Martin alongside Lance Stroll, and let's say like Vettel was never there and Fernando Alonso never came in from Alpine, if we were comparing those two in that Aston Martin car, although Sergio Perez did have an incredible season in 2020, I don't know. I feel like it would just be closer. Fernando Alonso is always so good compared to all of his teammates. I think Esteban Ocon is the only driver or the only teammate to like finish ahead of him. Is that right? Is that wrong? It feels right. Maybe Lewis Hamilton somewhere in there. Jenson Button probably actually maybe finished ahead of Fernando Alonso at some point or another. But yeah, Fernando Alonso usually just destroys his teammates and has done this year with Lance Stroll. Will he be in Formula One for that much longer? I don't think so. I think Lance Stroll has realized that he's kind of got a ceiling and he's hit it, especially because if you think he's been in Formula One longer than, let's go back to the Drivers' Championship. He's been in Formula One longer than Russell, Norris, Albon, Leclerc. Like all of those guys have come into Formula One after Lance Stroll. And all of them are now talked about way higher in terms of their like potential ceiling, whether or not they can win championships, whether or not they can win races. And Lance Stroll's never in that conversation. And that's got to kind of weigh on him a little bit because he's the same age as those kind of guys. He came into Formula One earlier and now is seen as a much worse driver, even though he has a little bit more experience. So it's just like, how far can he really go in Formula One and how much faith does he really have in himself to properly be able to take Aston Martin to where they want to be? Did I hear the rumor that Red Bull wants Alonso? I don't believe they'll choose him over Ricciardo if Perez leaves, but fun to think about. I feel like Fernando Alonso also doesn't want that. As much as Fernando Alonso loves a driver transfer, you know, he's been to a lot of the teams on the Formula One grid, and he's dabbled in a few different constructors over the course of his career. I don't know if Fernando Alonso would want to go to Red Bull right now just to play second fiddle. Like he has Aston Martin probably where he wants in terms of like the team. Obviously the car isn't moving in the correct direction. You have to remember at the beginning of the season they showed a lot of promise. So he's maybe gambling on the fact that start of 2024 they'll be able to find what they did have at the start of this season, and they've had a year of maybe being able to, you know, understand this car concept a little bit better. Obviously they pushed it in the wrong direction post Canada and they haven't been able to really get it back on track since then. I don't know, it's a difficult one for Fernando because obviously you'd love to go into the fastest car on the Formula One grid. Who wouldn't? You know, give yourself an opportunity at winning more Grand Prix. And then that elusive 33rd race victory has been falling away. I mean, I wrote a video about this is how close I thought the Aston Martin team were to getting Fernando Alonso a victory at some point this season. I wrote a video about Fernando Alonso and like the journey that he's been on between his 32nd and 33rd victory, and like how his career had kind of adapted through then, what's changed in Formula One since then, the biggest kind of milestones between there and then. And obviously I've been kind of holding on to that video, like Fernando Alonso needs to win a race for me to really release this. That's kind of the linchpin of the video, and it hasn't happened. So that video is probably never ever going to see the light of day, and if it does, it will probably be like what's happened in 10 years in Formula One, which just doesn't have like the same pull to it, does it? You know, when you're looking for content, you're looking for like that title, and you're like, what's happened since Fernando Alonso's last win is way better a title than what's happened since 2013. I'd love to do a video. I would love you to do. Well, I was going to say, Sally. I mean, you can do video if you want. I'd love you to do a video on parental influence on Formula One drivers from the support of the Hamiltons and the Sons, previous drivers. Daddy bought the team. Yeah, it is. I suppose it's one of those things. I think that the main factor is just the financial backing that you need to get into Formula One. I made a video this week about the rookies that we saw in Mexico, and that kind of got me interested about, Formula One academies and how Formula One academies are structured and the way in which Formula One academies were kind of introduced to bridge that gap between the financial elites being able to get into Formula One and then the actual best talented drivers getting into Formula One. But even so, to get into karting, get into Formula 4, Formula 3, you still have to have a huge amount of financial backing that if you're not inside of a driver academy, it's very, very difficult to come by. So I think the main reason that Formula One drivers end up having a lot of parental influence is because it's that parent that is usually putting the down payment on their career, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, say Lance Stroll never gets into Formula One, the amount of money that Lawrence Stroll pumped into Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2 to be able to try and get his son into a Formula One seat, had that never come off, you're looking at Lawrence Stroll effectively spending millions and millions of pounds and getting nothing back from it. And similar with Jos Verstappen and the similar kind of vibe, I guess you could say, with... who else am I thinking of? Their name has just completely dropped out of my mouth. Who was the driver a couple of years ago that had a dad who was also a Formula One driver? Not Mick Schumacher, that's the obvious one. Their name has completely escaped my mind. Anyway, we've seen, with that parental influence, if their dad was a Formula One driver, they have the amount of money and financial backing, and also the able to get them into a team. Like the fact that Jos Verstappen was a Formula One driver, he probably had connections to someone somewhere in the Red Bull system, or someone somewhere in the Formula One system to kind of, give Max Verstappen that little bit of an edge. Same with Mick Schumacher, like as much as Michael Schumacher wasn't able to help in a huge sense because of that accident that he had, in terms of like being at the track and being there with Mick, he still has the name. He still has that basically link to all of the Formula One teams. And Mick Schumacher, I think the fact that Mercedes have picked him up this year kind of links back to the fact that Michael raced for them when he came back from retiring into Formula One and was alongside Nico Rosberg for that couple of seasons. Mazepin, no, it wasn't Mazepin. Carlos Sainz's dad is also a driver, that is very true. Mazepin's dad wasn't a Formula One driver. He just had a lot of money. Same thing though, like you can either go... that's a good video actually, Sally. I might write that one down, because you can either go the route of the fact that if they have the finances, then they get into Formula One that way. Or if your dad is a Formula One driver, then they get into Formula One that way, because they have pretty much the finances too. Like, I imagine that Max Verstappen has made more money in his career than Jos Verstappen made in his entire career already. But at the same time, Jos Verstappen was hardly strapped for cash when he was trying to get Max Verstappen into karting and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of drivers, a lot of the time it gets kind of lost that their dad is maybe someone quite influential. Like Lando Norris's dad is a billionaire. Doesn't he own like a banking firm? Is it Hargreaves Lansdown that comes off the top of my head? I think Lando Norris's dad is like one of the top people at Hargreaves Lansdown, which is like a huge banking company. So again, has that financial backing from that side of things. Bruno Senna, of course. Nico Rosberg, yeah, of course, had a dad in Formula One. Fittipaldi at Haas had a dad who was also a Formula One driver. I think that was who I was trying to think of. It just completely blanked out of my mind. I had their name and then I just... Nicholas Latifi, I assume is who the Lord is. Yeah, Nicholas Latifi. I feel like the one standout for me is Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon's parents are not in any way sort of financially able to back his career. I think a lot of Esteban Ocon's career path has basically come down to Mercedes picking him up very, very early on. Oh yeah, apologies. There is a 15-minute delay to the start of qualifying. There was a lot of debris out on the track. And Crashgate, forget the name. PK, yeah. PK, of course. 2 PKs in Formula 1. It is a good idea, actually. Maybe I could rank... maybe I could do a video where I look at all of the drivers and then all the drivers' dads, and I rank them, like, if they were a driver pairing, how good they would be. That'd be quite interesting. We'll have to make a list, because I'll need your guys' help on that, because I don't have the knowledge prior to like 2010 backwards, because I was a child, and then also like 2000 backwards I didn't exist really, so I'd need your help and influence on that kind of thing. Seb was a self-built driver, that's very true. Lewis didn't have a rich parent as such, but his parent, so his dad in particular, worked like 3 jobs, I think, to give Lewis Hamilton the opportunity to get in. But yeah, that's a good... Oh, that's a really... I'm writing that down. Where's my little notepad? Like, if... Because the thing is, right, you'd say, oh, Max Verstappen and Jos Verstappen, they'd win the championship as a good driver pairing, but Jos Verstappen wasn't great. Like, Jos Verstappen wasn't good. So, like, what if we had a driver pairing grid where it had to be 2 family members, and they have to have raced in Formula 1 before? Like, I'm not going to put Lewis Hamilton and like Roscoe in, because that would be silly. Like Jacques and Gilles Villeneuve, that might be the best one. Ariosta, I think you've nailed it. I think that might be the best one. I really love Jacques Villeneuve and Gilles Villeneuve. Ooh. Okay, I'm writing it down. I'm writing it. He's got a notepad. This is why you keep a notepad and a pen. I have this notepad and pen with me all the time. The amount of like ideas for videos that I just have in the middle of the night get jotted down on a post-it note. That's how it works. It's how content creation works. Have you got an idea? Yep, throw it down. Driver pairings, family, ranked. Would it be ranked? Would I try and rank them, or would I try and like... Yeah, I feel like I go from the best driver pairing, or the worst driver pairing, to the best driver pairing, right? Of like 2. Yos. Yeah, that's very true. He was. The Schumachers. The Schumacher's an interesting one, isn't it? Again, like, I feel like it would actually be a really good video, because you've got like Michael Schumacher, then you've got Mick, and you've got like Max Verstappen, you've got Jos, you've got Ayrton Senna, you've got Bruno. Like, it's actually like quite a tricky one. The hills. Oh my god. Oh my god. Nobody steal this idea. No, nobody in the Formula... Because I know a couple of Formula 1 content creators do watch these. They kind of lurk in the shadows. But yeah, we'd have to make a comprehensive list of driver pairings that have, you know, both been in Formula 1. Do brothers count? Have there been brothers? Name some brothers. Obviously, the Hermanos brothers, like the Mexican brothers. But to be honest, that was so long ago. Like, I'd have to like... Ralph Schumacher, of course. Yeah. Ralph Schumacher. No, I feel like it would have to be Mick and Michael, right? Mick and Michael would have to be the driver pair. Should we actually talk about qualifying? we have gone on a detour of all detours. We are actually getting towards the start of qualifying now, though. There were a couple more things I needed to talk about in terms of Brazil, but we can leave those to another time. We got the whole sprint weekend to have a chat to one another. It'd be tricky though, because Ralph, Michael, and Mick. Maybe Ralph could be like the test driver. Although you'd say Ralph has had a better. Yeah, sorry, I just completely blanked on Ralf Schumacher there. Does anyone remember Ralph? Like, of the Schumachers? Also, again, like before my time, Ralf Schumacher. I do try my best to learn about like Formula One history. And I do try my best, especially the 90s. I feel like the 90s are still accessible enough that I'm like, okay, yeah, I can take that in. But like Formula One in the 60s just isn't the same sport. It just doesn't count effectively to me. Like obviously it counts. Like I know there's some incredible drivers from back then, but it's just so hard to like actually connect with that because it's just so far afield from the Formula One that I fell in love with. It's like if you're really into rugby and you try and get into American football, like they are very different sports. They've just got the same ball. Like I get it. They're both cars. they're both Formula One cars. They've all got 4 wheels, but like it's so different and so not akin to the Formula One that we have now. When will it start? We are about a minute away from starting. We are just waiting for the green light at the end of the pit lane. We're already seeing a stack of cars in the pit lane. There is a Williams at the front. Who's at the front there? Oh no, there's a McLaren at the front that's snuck in front of the 2 Williamses that I didn't see. Oscar Piastri comes out first. Albon out for Williams. Sargent out for Williams. Let's get on to a little bit more detail for you. No radio messages as of yet. But let's have a little look at who's coming out where in this. So as I said, Oscar Piastri out first for the McLaren team. He's going to be the first driver to set a fast lap. McLaren looking really quick in free practice. Couple of aborted laps. So they dropped to the back of the standings because they were running the hard compound tyre, but didn't really give a good idea of where their pace is. And we didn't see a lot of the teams run the soft compound tyre, to be fair. We didn't see the Red Bulls on the soft compound tyre. We didn't see the Mercedes on the soft compound tyre. So there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes coming into this, and not many absolutes. Alonso and Stroll behind the Williamses, then the Alfa Romeos out of the garage as well. Lando Norris far afield from his teammate. Verstappen and Perez come out together. Leclerc and Sainz actually in the mix with the Red Bulls. Hulkenberg and Magnussen. 2 drivers that have been on pole position here before in the Hasses. The Haas looks pretty good in free practice as well. Also coming to the end of the pit lane. Russell and Hamilton only just making their way out of the pits as Oscar Piastri starts his first flying lap. Soft compound tyres on the McLaren car. Come on then, let's see what Oscar can do. His first time around here, of course. The rookie this season. Same for Logan Sargent. But Piastri. Risk of rain in qualifying session is up to 60%. If you saw my preview video that released on Wednesday, you'll know that at that time it was 40% chance of rain, now up to 60% during this session. So we're looking like there might be a little bit of a drizzle at some point. Fernando Alonso goes quickest in the first sector of anybody. I know that, you know, looking at it, only the Williamses and Piastri have gone before him, but still impressive from Fernando Alonso if he can stay towards the top of that timing sheet. We're starting to see a lot of cars now, and the traffic is going to be heavy, I would say. It's quite a short track around here. Oscar Piastri proves that, a 1:11.4 from him to get us underway in this Q1 session. Of course, this is qualifying for Sunday's race, so we're still just looking for those bottom 5 drivers highlighted in red at the bottom of the graphic there. At the moment, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Ocon and Perez, but only 2 drivers have set lap time, so still a long way to go. Fernando Alonso didn't turn that very fast middle sector into a full lap, a 1:11.5 for him. Slots himself into 3rd place between Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. Then we are seeing the Hasses currently. Oh, little replay of Oscar Piastri. Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, and Lance Stroll comes across the line at 1:11.4, a little bit quicker. Valtteri Bottas goes 2nd fastest. Oh, Lando Norris goes into the 1:10s, a 1:10.6 from Lando Norris. And Max Verstappen, 3/10 off Lando Norris's time. Very interesting indeed. Leclerc in the 8th fastest. The Ferraris obviously topping the timing sheets in free practice. Carlos Sainz going quicker than his teammate. Oh, by 0.02 of a second. So, not a lot between the 2 Ferraris, but enough to separate them just. And then Sergio Perez jumps into 10th place. Nico Hülkenberg for the Hasses goes 8th fastest. Can Kevin Magnussen improve on that? Lewis Hamilton, quickest in the middle sector, Lewis Hamilton there. A very short final sector. Effectively just... It is technically a corner, but you're flat all the way around it. And Lewis Hamilton goes 2nd fastest, a 1:10.8. Kevin Magnussen was 4th fastest for a second until George Russell came in with a 1:11.2. And Max Verstappen struggling a touch, jumping around. The car doesn't seem balanced in the way that he wants. Did have that problem in Mexico, as he points out. But let's have a little look then. Gasly comes across the line. Who have we got? Ocon as well, just coming around. Tsunoda and Ricciardo will round out this first session of lap times. And what I do want to have a little look at is the sector timings so far in this. Because everybody has done a lap time now. We've got our bottom 5, including 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Logan Sargent and Zhou Guanyu, the 5 drivers that would drop out if it ended here. And remember, there is an opportunity of some rain. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc were on used tyres, though. That explains a little bit why they were so far off the pace. If Stroll's P1, there'll be a shock. He was for a moment, dropped all the way down to 8th now, though. Gasly and Ricciardo putting in some solid lap times at the end there. Oh, Pierre Gasly. And George Russell impeding, possibly, Pierre Gasly coming out of the pits, I think that is. And George Russell going very slowly at the end of the pit lane. That will be investigated. Got to keep to the left if you want to be going slow in the pit lane. And George Russell really wasn't quite in the middle there. Gasly wanted to get past, couldn't, but still set a faster lap. 4th fastest Pierre Gasly in this one. Let's have a little look at these sector timings then. You can see Lando Norris very quick across all 3 sectors, hence being fastest overall. I mean, that would make sense. But 2nd fastest, and then fastest in the final sector is interesting from Lando Norris. Also very clear that Lewis Hamilton, that middle sector is very different to the other 2. Sector 1, Sector 3, a lot more high speed. Sector 2, a little bit more twisty. And maybe the Mercedes just setting up for that better downforce package, allowing themselves to get the leap in Sector 2. Charles Leclerc is now underway on another lap for the Ferraris, trying to improve on his lap time. Carlos Sainz on the radio. No rain expected for 2 to 3 minutes. We have 1 timed lap. So Carlos Sainz, a little bit of pressure there. Oh, there is... Oh, sorry. I thought that was 3/10 quicker than Lando Norris, but it wasn't. Charles Leclerc currently 3/10ths quicker than Nico Hülkenberg in the first sector, but does jump to top of that first sector timing. He was 2/10ths quicker than Lando Norris. So Charles Leclerc with a fresh set of soft compound tyres, maybe showing the pace that the Ferrari really has. I'm expecting the Ferrari to be very quick in the first and third sectors. Be interesting to see where Charles Leclerc comes in after this middle sector then. So sector 2 completed for Charles Leclerc. Give it a second. Third fastest. Okay. The Ferrari looking pretty decent in the middle sector as well. I was expecting it to be a little bit further down in the rankings there, but faster than Max Verstappen in that middle sector, Charles Leclerc, and goes quickest of anybody by a 10.5. A 10.4 for Charles Leclerc is definitely more like what I was expecting from the Ferrari package. That drops Fernando Alonso out of this qualifying session in the Aston Martin. Carlos Sainz then darting towards the line, goes fourth fastest, also quicker than Max Verstappen. So Verstappen dropping to 5th place in this one. Obviously didn't win here last year. Max Verstappen will be looking to add Brazil to his win list this season. And Oscar Piastri just set the fastest first sector of anybody. An 18.3 in the first sector for Oscar Piastri. And maybe the track just coming towards these drivers a little bit, because Fernando Alonso goes third fastest with a 1:10.8. Obviously, only one free practice session, so the rubber that they are putting down on the track right now is allowing them to get these faster and faster lap times. Oscar Piastri goes from 16th to 2nd with a 1:10.5. And just half a tenth of a second behind Charles Leclerc. McLaren looking very good indeed, although Ferrari, Mercedes also looking to close in. Max Verstappen, 7th fastest now. Gasly, 8th. Daniel Ricciardo, 9th. That bottom 5, though, Sargent, Albon, Hülkenberg, Perez, and Zhou Guanyu. Still no rain as of yet, but it's getting closer and closer to being expected. It's getting darker and darker here in Brazil. We've got Sergio Perez now putting in a fast lap. Bottas, Sargent, Albon, and Zhou all in the pits, though. And Yuki Tsunoda, the man under pressure. Sergio Perez, one Red Bull driver, could knock out another here. Daniel Ricciardo up in 10th place. Although these drivers not very happy with their lap times coming out once again. Perez only 5th fastest. Into the 1:10s though from Sergio Perez, so getting quicker. Barring rain, thinking of 1:10.5 in Q1. That is a very specific suggestion. So far, Aston Martin showing they have better pace than where they were in the previous 2 weekends. That is very true. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, 3rd and 6th currently. But there is the rain. Esteban Ocon, currently 15th fastest. It's not. Well, it's a bit better. 15th fastest in the middle sector from Esteban Ocon. 5th fastest in the first sector, though, in an Alpine, which doesn't have the best straight line speed, is pretty impressive from the Frenchman. Only goes 11th fastest overall, though, does Esteban Ocon. Yuki Tsunoda dropped down into 16th place, is trying to improve. Still 6 minutes left of this session. A lot of laps left to see. But Yuki Tsunoda trying to improve already, get himself out of that bottom 5. He's currently joined by 2 Alfa Romeos, and he does get out of there and drops Kevin Magnussen into that bottom 5. So it's 2 Alfa Romeos, 2 Williamses, and Kevin Magnussen with Nico Hülkenberg just sneaking through in 15th place if it finishes as it is right now. George Russell under pressure in 14th place, is on a lap for the Mercedes team and goes 12th fastest, George Russell. So still in the 1:11s there from the Mercedes. A 1:11 dead, but a 1:11 nonetheless. Oh, it was used tyres on George Russell's car, of course. Look at that. Max Verstappen up into 5th fastest now, ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. There's not a lot in it right now. The top 3 covered by a 10th, then Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Sergio Perez just 2/10 separates them from Charles Leclerc. Valtteri Bottas, 17th fastest right now. Nico Hülkenberg, the man on the bubble, in 15th. And Bottas a 10th quicker than Hülkenberg in the first sector. Ooh, Lewis Hamilton and team not confident that they are through. Currently 8th fastest. Let's have a little look at where they are. So Lewis Hamilton about to start his flying lap, I think. Is going to take a fresh set of tyres to the track. No, comes into the pits, Lewis Hamilton. Okay, so that was Hamilton coming in for a fresh set of tyres. That makes more sense. Isn't sprint quality meant to be hard, medium, soft? Not always. They like trialed it. And they didn't really determine, or they didn't really tell us whether or not it worked or didn't. So we don't 100% know. We don't 100% know. How can Kevin Magnussen go out with such a quick first sector? I mean, just look at that second sector time, unfortunately. Kevin Magnussen, 18th fastest in the middle sector. Whereas that first sector, 4th fastest, 7th sector, 3rd sector, 7th fastest for Kevin Magnussen. But yeah, that middle sector just dragging the Haas car down. Damp or wet quali later. It's looking likely. It's a 60% chance of rain. We've seen a couple of images of the radar. It is looking gloomy in Brazil, but still no rain actually falling on the track. There is Alex Albon, 4th fastest there. A 1:10.6. And now you can see why Lewis Hamilton maybe wasn't 100% safe with that previous lap time. What did Lewis Hamilton have? A 1:10.83. So we'll keep an eye on that, 1:10.83, and see whether or not that would have been good enough and if Lewis Hamilton could have saved a set of tyres. Lance Stroll. Drops of rain, says Lance Stroll. And obviously, Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hülkenberg, Zhou Guanyu, Kevin Magnussen, and Logan Sargent will absolutely hate the chance of any rain right about now, because that will definitely condemn them to the bottom 5. And all 5 looking to improve their times. Although Zhou Guanyu still in the pit lane, needs to get out on track very swiftly. He does want to set another lap time, Zhou. It's not a super long out lap, but still. Nico Hülkenberg goes fastest in the first sector of anybody. Wowee. Sainz goes 6th fastest, a 1:10.6 from Carlos Sainz. Logan Sargent, currently 20th. Where can he jump up to? 15th. It's still a 1:11 though from Logan Sargent. Feels like that will not be good enough to get him through, especially with Nico Hülkenberg improving his times quite substantially. Lewis Hamilton goes 4th fastest. George Russell goes 1:10.3 and goes quickest of anybody. Nico Hülkenberg getting a lovely little slipstream as well. Goes 3rd fastest in the Haas. Very nice indeed. So Bottas now the driver at risk. And Bottas not on a fast lap. Neither is Zhou Guanyu by the looks of things. So both of the Alfa Romeos look to be out of this one. Kevin Magnussen goes quicker, 6th fastest. And yeah, now you can see why Lewis Hamilton had to go out again. That 110.83. Fernando Alonso now the driver at risk with a 110.87. He goes quicker though. 6th fastest from Fernando Alonso and takes the checkered flag. Yuki Tsunoda now the man. Daniel Ricciardo, 6,000ths of a second slower than his teammate. And Yuki Tsunoda, I don't think, is on an incredible lap, so might end up joining his teammate. Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda does not improve. Esteban Ocon in 19th place then is the man to keep an eye on. He's a 10th up on Yuki Tsunoda coming out of the second sector. And a sprint down to the line. Max Verstappen goes second, fastest of anybody, but all eyes on Esteban Ocon. Can he do it? Yes! Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly both make it through just in 14th and 15th place. But it's both AlphaTauris, Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, joined by his teammate Zhou Guanyu, as well as Logan Sargent in the bottom 5. So it is 2 AlphaTauris, 2 Alfa Romeos, and a Williams. Gasly and Ocon just about sneaking through. Sergio Perez will feel fairly comfortable in 13th place, you'd imagine. He still had a 10th or so on his side. Carlos Sainz the same. Lando Norris in 11th place. Oops, Tsunoda on the radio. And Tsunoda on the radio feels like Lewis Hamilton in some way impeded him. Didn't see it. Let's see a replay. Oh, it's exiting the pit lane again. That's not Lewis Hamilton. Oh, Gasly. So what? Verstappen goes past people on the grass in the pit lane. Verstappen past Perez and Ocon. There is a thing here, like they were supposed to, so effectively they were told if they want to go slow in the pit lane, they have to stay left, right? They have to move out of the way of other drivers who do want to get on with a fast lap. Because we've seen in the last 2 Grand Prix that every time there's been a stopping at the end of the pit lane, it's then had to be investigated, it's been looked into, etc., etc., etc. Whereas they were told this time around, look, stay left, allow other drivers to get past. And we're not really seeing that, if I'm honest. Every time we keep seeing has to be quick in quali. I feel like, unfortunately, they've just got a qualifying car this year. A little bit like we saw with Ferrari last season. You know, Charles Leclerc ended up getting the most pole positions of anybody, but Max Verstappen won 15 races last year. This feels like a similar kind of thing, but on like a kind of midfield, lower field level with Haas. Like Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg in particular, usually gets through to Q3, but doesn't usually turn that into anything. Let's have a little look at the... Oh, wrong one. Sector timings, though. So, yeah, Nico Hülkenberg, quickest in the first sector of anybody. Pierre Gasly also really quick in the first sector. Wasn't expecting the Alpine to be as quick as it is in the first sector. Like, it's quite a sort of high-speed sector. And we know that the Alpine isn't great in a straight line. Feel like that comes to fruition a little bit with Esteban Ocon being 10th fastest in the third sector. But actually, the Alpine just having pretty good straight line speed and being slower in the middle sector. You can see Ocon and Gasly 15th and 18th fastest in the middle sector. I would have imagined that being the other way around, but maybe Alpine kind of setting themselves up for a little bit more straight line speed this weekend and allowing themselves to have a little bit less downforce in that middle sector. Maybe because they're expecting to have to do a little bit of overtaking come the sprint race and the race itself on Sunday. Then we look sort of down a little bit. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris putting in some pretty decent lap times, although you can see just not complete lap times from either of them. So like Lando Norris, fastest in the third sector, 19th fastest in the first sector. Oscar Piastri, third fastest in the first sector, 19th fastest in the final sector. So it is that split for McLaren right now. Neither driver really being able to hook up a whole lap at this moment in time. And that is something we've seen from Lando Norris in particular recently that has cost him. You know, you think back to Mexico Q1, he had an opportunity to put a lap time together, didn't do it because of a mistake. He wasn't able to put a full lap together. Similar in Qatar when he ended up making that mistake and obviously crossed the track limits, didn't get a full lap together. It's just like everything for Lando Norris not quite being as good as you'd want in qualifying over the last couple of weekends. I think Fernando Alonso jumping up to 5th fastest in the first sector is quite a surprise. But again, maybe that Aston Martin's setting themselves up for a little bit more straight line speed. Although actually saying that Alonso 18th fastest in the final sector, it's tricky. It's tricky. Haas absolutely rapid in the final sector. Yeah, they've definitely set themselves up for a kind of a straight line speed advantage. Plus, Nico Hülkenberg had a really nice little toe down to the line. I think it was a Red Bull in front of him, possibly Sergio Perez. I may have completely made that up. But yeah, Nico Hülkenberg had quite a nice little toe down to the line, which would have given him a little bit of an advantage in that final sector. Wow, that is a very dark cloud that seems to be looming over the track, and that is why we're seeing a lot of cars getting out on track as quickly as they possibly can. The two Red Bulls first out on track already at the end of the pit lane. A Williams of Alex Albon jumps out of his pit garage very swiftly as well. But basically everyone trying to get a lap in just in case. Feel bad for Hulk. Definitely has more to give in that race car if it was a faster car. It's just the tyre degradation for them. They just cannot seem to get that tyre inside of a thermal window that operates for like an entire stint like everybody else can. Their tyre stints are just like 5-6 laps shorter than everyone, and over the course of a Grand Prix, that just absolutely kills your race pace. Ooh. The McLaren's still in the garage, so probably going to be at the back of the queue here is Oscar Piastri. Because as I said, everybody pretty much coming out on track. Verstappen and Perez out first. Let's pop the track map up for you. Nope, that's track limits. Track map. There we go. But yeah, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez will be first to set their lap times. Alex Albon in the Williams just behind. Then the Aston Martins managed to get out. We've got Hamilton and Norris next to one another in the pit lane right now. George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz coming out. Then Oscar Piastri towards the back of this pack. Ooh. Gunther Steiner saying that they don't think the rain is going to come in this session. Hulkenberg, Magnussen sticking in the garage then. And kind of holding on to a little bit of this. Max told Hulk. Oh, was it Max? I knew it was a Red Bull. I just couldn't remember. So I 50-50'd and went for Sergio Perez. Hello, Andy, mate. How are you? How will Lando and McLaren fare this weekend? I mean, really well if they can put a full lap together. But Piastri wasn't able to do the final sector. Norris wasn't able to do the first sector last time out, which meant both of their lap times were kind of quite mid. Sergio Perez actually quicker than Max Verstappen in that first sector. Not bad at all. A 10th of a second on his teammate there. Fernando Alonso, I think, is on a used... Is he on a used set of tyres? No. Fresh set of tyres for Fernando Alonso. Interesting. Just realised it's the first time that Stroll's got into Q2 since coming back from the summer break. Is that true? Oh, that is a damning stat, isn't it? But congratulations. Well done, Stroll. I feel like we should be positive about that. Well done. Well done, Stroll. Max Verstappen a 110.1 to get us underway. Sergio Perez a 110.3. Albon a 110.8. Fernando Alonso also goes for a 110.8, although fastest in the final sector of anybody. Not quite at the level of Norris or Leclerc that we had in Q1, but a very quick final sector from Fernando Alonso there. Hamilton across the line, 4th fastest, 110.5, so 3.5 tenths off Verstappen. Norris also goes a couple of tenths behind Verstappen as well, 1.5 tenths off Verstappen in 2nd place. George Russell was looking pretty quick. Can he put together another good lap here? No, a 1:11 from George Russell. Not the one. Oh, Lando Norris on used tyres there. Lance Stroll on used tyres. Lewis Hamilton on used tyres. George Russell on used tyres and not quite getting it together. Charles Leclerc, 8th fastest, also on used tyres. Carlos Sainz, 10th fastest. Oscar Piastri is going to be next, goes 3rd fastest. So drops Carlos Sainz into 11th. Again, we're looking for the bottom 5 in this Q2 section, highlighted in red on the graphic. So Carlos Sainz, Ocon, Gasly, Hülkenberg, Magnussen at the moment. But Ocon setting his lap time, 7th quickest for Esteban Ocon. Gasly goes 8th fastest, so just behind his teammate by a couple of tenths, actually. Gasly slower than his teammate. So Leclerc, Russell, Sainz now dropping into the bottom 5. Hülkenberg and Magnussen. Oh, and that's why George Russell didn't set the best of lap times. Drifting very wide, George Russell getting all out of shape in his Mercedes car. Hülkenberg and Magnussen were patient. We heard Gunther Steiner saying that they didn't believe the rain was going to come, so they kept the drivers back for a moment. Did it work out, letting the other cars lay down a little bit more rubber? Nico Hülkenberg is going to be across the line first for the Haas duo. Kevin Magnussen just behind him. Hülkenberg starts this flying lap then. Alpine in the pit. Albon in the pit, sorry. He is indeed. Oh, Nico Hülkenberg. Very quick indeed. Kevin Magnussen also very quick in the first sector. I think Haas might have done something a little bit special here. The middle sector, though, is where they do struggle. So they just need to hold on in this middle sector. Try not to lose too much time, because they know in the 3rd sector they can make up a 10th or 2 once again. Yeah, this is very encouraging for Aston Martin. I do agree. Well, much more encouraging than the last 3 races have been, really. Hülkenberg across the line, 8th fastest, splits the Alpines. And Kevin Magnussen across the line, 9th fastest, so also in between the 2 Alpines. About a 10th slower than his teammate. Puts Alex Albon and Fernando Alonso down into that bottom 5. So it is Albon, Alonso, Leclerc, Russell and Sainz who would currently drop out of qualifying if it were to end here. Lewis Hamilton, though, clearly not happy with his time. Track temperature is dropping, so Lewis Hamilton wanting to get out there whilst it's still as warm as possible. Ooh. Hamilton getting a lot of curb at the end of the final sector. I mean, he's trying to find some pace where maybe some pace doesn't exist in that Mercedes car, Lewis Hamilton. Ooh. George Russell going a lot quicker than he was last time around. Already 6/10 up on Pierre Gasly's time in the middle sector. How many laps will take place for qualifying? It depends, to be honest with you. It depends. There's not a set amount of time. There's not a set amount of laps that the teams have to do. Generally speaking, you kind of have 2 or 3 laps in Q1, 2 or 3 laps in Q2, and then probably a couple of laps in Q3 from each driver. But it does depend on the track, because this one being a bit shorter, you can get 3 laps in fairly comfortably, but other tracks that are longer, you can only really get 2 laps in. It's because of the timed nature of Q1, 2, and 3. Hamilton then. Oh, yeah. Good catch from Lewis Hamilton, though. Could have definitely ended up going sideways out of turn 4, could Lewis Hamilton? Yeah, rear tiles just squeak out from underneath him. Good evening from Holland. Nice to see you again, mate. Love Holland. Been to a couple of different parts of the Netherlands. Very much enjoyed it. Let's have a little look at these sector times just very quickly. Because again, I feel like the McLarens are quick. Again, it's just like Lando Norris in that first sector really can't get it together. Because I just saw Lando Norris quickest in the final sector, and I was like, he's 4th fastest still. What's going on there? 17th fastest in the first sector. Goodness me. Got a new subscriber? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I will hopefully be here to answer any questions you've got. Piastri and Norris. There we go, Lando. 2nd fastest in the first sector now. Much, much better from Lando Norris. Still, Oscar Piastri has the better of his teammate, but maybe a more complete lap from Lando Norris, rather than one sector being phenomenal, other sector being poor. And actually, Lando Norris a 10th up on Max Verstappen coming out of the middle sector. This looks very good. Alex Albon can't really improve, goes 14th fastest, but Lando is going to come across the line and go quickest. A 110 dead. Nearly into the 1.9s from Lando Norris there. Wow. Alex Albon, track limits violation. Better being track limits violation. Alex Albon, lap time deleted. So Norris and Verstappen quickest at the moment. Verstappen on an outlap currently. Sergio Perez on a flying lap for the Red Bull team. Oh, Sergio Perez actually coming across the line. 3rd fastest, 110.2. So 2/10 off Lando Norris's time. Where is Sergio Perez losing time? Final sector. Ooh. 16th fastest in the final sector of everybody, Sergio Perez. In terms of his best sector 3 times so far. Alonso. Fernando Alonso there. Just a grunt to exclaim that he's very happy to be in P4 at this current moment in time. Looking to get through to Q3 and actually have a much stronger weekend. Thank you for subscribing. All About Cars. What a name. What do you make videos on? McLaren fan? Maybe. I don't know what gives it away. Wow. Yeah, India watching at midnight. That is impressive. That's commitment to the cause. I like that. I appreciate that. I don't have too many races being in Europe that are super late. I suppose the one being Japan at like 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whenever it was. It's kind of the strangest time for me. But a lot of the European races obviously being perfectly in the middle of the day. Lap time deleted for Albon is indeed. Lando Norris still quickest. Verstappen second fastest still. Although Verstappen quicker than Norris in the middle sector. And in the first sector as well. So the final sector being where Max Verstappen lost out on a little bit of time. Ooh. And Max Verstappen almost stepping out of track limits there. Not quite. Kevin Magnussen, a pretty slow first sector from the Haas. And is the Haas dream going to be over and done with? Come on, Kevin. Needs to get through to Q3. Then a little bit of rain. And history will repeat itself. Hulkenberg, 11th fastest. And Kevin Magnussen going nowhere near as quick as his teammate. So both of the Haas's looking likely to drop out of qualifying here. Yep, Kevin Magnussen does not improve. Stays 13th fastest. So Hulkenberg and Magnussen probably out of this one. Albon also dropping out. Ocon and Gasly are the two to keep an eye on. Esteban Ocon with a pretty poor first sector. Little bit better in the middle sector. Lance Stroll on a 110.3 is what you need to beat. And Ocon will not. Ocon stays 12th. So stays in the bottom 5. Pierre Gasly on a lap. He is indeed. He's coming around turn 11 right now. Is Pierre Gasly. The last man to really look at whether or not he's going to be able to get through. Lance Stroll is in the pits. So it does come down to this. Gasly versus Stroll. And it's going to be Stroll that goes through. Gasly only 13th fastest. So Hulkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, Magnussen, and Albon are the 5 that drop out. Charles Leclerc is going to finish this flying lap, even though he is safe now in 9th place. Goes 7th fastest. And Oscar Piastri seems to have pulled out of his final flying lap. So, ooh. Interesting. As I said, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, Magnussen, and Albon join Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, Logan Sargent, and Zhou Guanyu out of qualifying. That is going to be our final 10, or our back 10, 11th through 20th, come the starting grid on Sunday. And Kevin Magnussen complaining about a Ferrari possibly getting in the way. There's a lot of traffic being discussed. Obviously, we had Yuki Tsunoda very unhappy to drop out of qualifying because of Lewis Hamilton. And now we've heard Kevin Magnussen complaining about a Ferrari. Here is an onboard of it. Coming through the middle sector. I'm not sure the Ferrari could really move. I think Kevin just made a little mistake. Maybe got distracted by the Ferrari. Can I change to the track map? I mean, yeah. You do know that the session's over, right? It's on 0. There's no cars out on track. The track map is empty. But yeah, I will pop it on when we get towards the start of the next session. Both Astons 3 can take a sigh of relief. At least they won't actually start from the pit lane, maybe, on Sunday, as they have been over the last few weekends. Haas just continuing the tradition. Does just seem they just don't quite have that like final little bit of pace. But maybe, come Sunday, they'll have a little bit more race pace. Unlikely, but maybe. You know, maybe. Top 10 consists of 5 teams in the Constructors Championship. It does, indeed. Yeah, we haven't got any surprises in there, I wouldn't say. Very much a 2x2 Formula 1 grid at this moment in time. Like, we've got the 2 Alpines next to one another, the 2 AlphaTauris next to one another. Obviously, Bottas and Joe only split by Logan Sargent. It's a little bit of a gap between Sargent and Albon. And similar with Hulkenberg and Magnussen, a bit of a gap there. But generally speaking, we're kind of 2x2 so far in Brazil. So not the mixed grid we were maybe expecting. However, the rain has not come that we were predicting. 60% chance of rain hasn't yet materialized. And if it doesn't materialize before the start of Q3, won't really have any kind of impact on this qualifying session. Perez into Q3 is indeed looking quick as well. Just behind Max Verstappen in 3rd place. Not doing too bad at all. What was he? 500ths? What is this? Oh, yeah. Is Call of Duty still going? Madness. They still make one every year. I just feel like any game that you make once a year can't be that good. Like, you've got a year to work on it. So to make a good game, you'd need longer than like 365 days, surely. Anyway, that is completely besides the point. As we head into the top 10 shootout. Still no rain. Oh, Gasly on the radio. Gasly losing time at turn 2, he said. Actually, wasn't the first sector that really cost him. You'd say the middle sector has been the real down point for Alpine. Although, that kind of bodes well for Sunday. Because you want the speed in the 1st and 3rd sectors to get those overtakes going. So, possibly looking good for Alpine to move forward come Sunday. Especially as Nico Hulkenberg in 11th place seems like quite an easy target. Although Nico Hulkenberg very quick in the 1st sector. Slower than Pierre Gasly, but quicker than Esteban Ocon. Could be close. Could be a close little battle. But you can see Gasly and Ocon there. 8th and 9th fastest in the 3rd sector. Hulkenberg, Magnussen good in the 3rd sector. So maybe actually those 4, although they've qualified outside of the top 10, they'll be able to push forwards because they'll have the overtaking pace to be able to get in front of people. If rain, Stroll could have looked good. He does qualify well in the wet. I think that's just like he did that once and now has a reputation of being like good in the wet, does Lance Stroll. What was it? Turkey 20 something? Turkey 20 something. Lance Stroll gets pole position. All of a sudden, he's a wet weather driver. When was the last time Stroll was in Q3? That must be a considerable time ago. Earlier on, we were told that this is the first time he's got through to Q2 since the summer break. So Q3 must be before summer. Belgium. Ugh. Sergeant Y. Just because he's not very quick. Hamilton is not giving his full potential, I guess. I don't know. The Mercedes car hasn't looked as swift as I was expecting it to be. They've got the middle sector is where they're really gaining their time, the Mercedes team. So maybe running a little bit more downforce than the other guys. Just losing out on straight line speed a touch. We know that the Mercedes hasn't been like the straight line behemoth this season. But doing better in that middle sector, running a little bit more downforce, a little bit better through the windy parts. Although there is a lot of time to be made in the... Oh. The skies are dark. The raincoat is on for one fan in the crowd. But they found her and they've put her on telly. Rain expected when? So Charles Leclerc, 7 minutes. 7 minutes. So actually, unlikely to really affect this qualifying session if it's 7 minutes in. Most drivers will have set their lap times by then. Does mean that most drivers will only have really one shot at this, especially if they're going out at the beginning. They won't really have enough time to come back in and do another lap time. If cars go out on track, please put the track map on. I know, Rob. I got it. Don't you worry. It's not our first rodeo. We are underway now. Fernando Alonso is first out. Lance Stroll behind him. Lewis Hamilton comes out third. So this is going to be the order that we set lap times. A Red Bull overtakes George Russell in the pit lane. Who was that? Max Verstappen. Of course it was. And Verstappen now trying to get past Lewis Hamilton as well. So Verstappen clearly not happy that the Red Bull team didn't let him out as quickly as possible. You need to throw it in, I think. Piastri just out of the garage. So we're seeing Russell, Leclerc, Norris coming out. Carlos Sainz just coming around the pit lane as well. Piastri and Perez at the back of this pack then. Cool, that is devastatingly dark in Brazil. The clouds looming, the air temperature dropping. Which team do I support? I am a McLaren fan, so I'm looking for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to do something a little bit special. Neither of them have been able to get together like a full, solid lap so far. I don't know, Norris actually last time up. Third fastest, first fastest. Fairly decent, that. Do we know the weather for tomorrow? It's more likely to rain today than tomorrow, it said. But it is Brazil, so the Lord only knows. Max Verstappen then starting his flying lap. Fernando Alonso catching up to the back of Sergio Perez. Hopefully the Mexican will get out of the way of the Aston Martin. Verstappen might have nailed this, you know, because he might not come up to the back of any of the traffic, because Sergio Perez is the last car that came out of the pits. And I don't think Hamilton... Oh, Lance Stroll either as well. So Stroll, Hamilton, Verstappen won't have to contend with that. So Alonso just a little bit... I know, Stroll has to get past Sergio Perez. But Verstappen, completely clear air for his flying lap. Same with Lewis Hamilton. Let's see then. Alonso across the line. A 111.3. That does not seem like it's going to do anything particularly special. Max Verstappen then is fastest in both sectors so far. Max Verstappen. He's going to come across the line and set the standard, it feels like. And 110.7 for Max Verstappen. So maybe just getting a little bit too cool in Brazil now compared to their Q2 times. George Russell at 111.5. Definitely the cars struggling a touch in comparison to Q2. 111 dead from Charles Leclerc. Goes second fastest. Lando Norris only 7th. A 111.9. I feel like the air temperature and track temperature has completely killed some of these guys. Oh, and Oscar Piastri is off the track. He's had a problem. And he's all over the grass, is Oscar Piastri. The car's still together. He's going to have to come back in and get a fresh set of tyres. That might have cost Sergio Perez some time in that final sector, though. It did massively. Sergio Perez at a 112.3 because he had to slow down because Oscar Piastri had had an incident at turn 12. So Oscar Piastri into the pits, needs to get straight back out, Oscar Piastri, if he's going to be able to do anything. Although the track temperature dropping drastically just seems to be the thing that has just completely killed the McLaren's pace. And Lando not very happy at all on the radio. 7 fastest. And again, it's another qualifying session where the McLaren of Lando Norris isn't as high as it was expected to be before the qualifying session got underway. A lot of people talking about McLaren being on the possible front row with Max Verstappen, if not the second row. But no, Lando Norris currently on the 4th row, 7th fastest. Carlos Sainz, 8th fastest. And also a little walk over the grass for Carlos Sainz on his way back. And the rain is beginning to fall now. And the rain is going to get heavier at this point. Well, that was it. That's it then. Does feel like that's over and done with. I know there's 6 minutes left on the clock, but the rain is starting to come now. So it's going to be Verstappen and Leclerc. Aston Martin take a bow. 3rd and 4th fastest. Alonso on the radio. Fernando Alonso says it is very, very dark now in Brazil. Don't know where the storm just appeared from out of nowhere between Q2 and Q3. And the wind is picked up massively. Nobody is going to come out once again. It's just going to run down the clock for 5 minutes at this point. Drivers all in the garages. And Charles Leclerc even jumping out of the car, I'd imagine. Yeah, specks of rain on the visor of Charles Leclerc there just shows that this is done and dusted. Verstappen fastest takes another pole position in 2023. Charles Leclerc second quickest in the Ferrari. 3/10 though off of Max Verstappen. That Red Bull being able to hold on to a little bit more pace than the rest as the temperatures dropped and the wind picked up. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso in 3rd and 4th for Aston Martin. That is sensational stuff from the Aston Martin duo, and maybe just revives a little bit of hope for their season if they start second on the grid, or on the second row of the grid, sorry, both of those cars. Hamilton and Russell will start side by side as well. 3rd row of the grid for Mercedes. Again, Lewis Hamilton will be a little bit frustrated by that. He was talking up his chances, but not likely that he will be able to catch up to Max Verstappen from 5th fastest. And there is the red flag then. The rain has dropped enough for the session to be red flagged, and I imagine they're just going to call that quits. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, ex-teammates of course, will start next to each other in 7th and 8th. Sergio Perez only 9th fastest after he had to slow down because Oscar Piastri 10th fastest and had a problem. Dropped his car on the way around turn 12. Sergio Perez losing out because of that. The yellow flag slowing him down. Then Nico Hulkenberg and Esteban Ocon will start just outside the top 10 come Sunday. Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen behind. So 2 Haas's and 2 Alpines. It'll be interesting to see how those 4 battle their way through the Brazilian Grand Prix. Alex Albon, the final driver to make it through into Q2, but he will start in 15th place. Yuki Tsunoda frustratingly 16th, although ahead of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo in 17th. Valtteri Bottas, Logan Sargent, and Zhou Guanyu, the final 3 drivers at the back of the grid. Quali ruined by that 15-minute delay. Yeah, it really was actually, wasn't it? Although maybe, if they delayed it by half an hour, then we'd have had Q3 with these conditions, and it would have been absolutely mental to watch. So maybe they should have delayed it by even more time. Pity for Perez that he couldn't finish his lap. Yeah, it's very unfortunate for Sergio Perez. But unfortunately, it just feels like one of those things. Like when you're unlucky, you keep getting unlucky. You know what I mean? Like he just needs one race to really go his way, and he just can't find one at the minute, Sergio Perez. Everything he does just seems to go wrong. And once again, coming out last, you risk that when you do come out of the garage last. when you're the final driver on track, if there is a red flag, a yellow flag, you're going to be the driver that loses out. And Sergio Perez was this time. Mercedes forgetting where they are. Thank you for the stream. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. I am going to disappear. The session will no longer be resumed as the rain absolutely hammers down. You can barely even see the pit lane anymore. There is so much rain and such a dark surrounding. The storm has come and it has enveloped the track here in Brazil. That is absolutely crazy to see. But anyway, I'm going to disappear. This is the grid. Come on. This is the grid come Sunday's Grand Prix. But of course, it is a sprint weekend. So we have 2 more sessions tomorrow. We're going to have a sprint shootout to begin with and a sprint race as well. Both of which I will be live for. So if you want to get involved for the entire sprint day and effectively spend an entire Saturday with everybody here, please hit like, hit subscribe. We'll be here. And then again on Sunday, if you're just more interested in the actual race itself on Sunday, that is absolutely fair enough. But we'll be here once again. Thank you all so much. I'll see you later. Goodbye.